Jack Nicholson has always been one of Hollywood's most unpredictable and magnetic figures. From his chilling performance in The Shining to his unforgettable roles in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in Chinatown, Jack Nicholson built a reputation as a man who lived just as intensely off-screen as he did on it. He wasn't known for long-term stability or traditional romance. In fact, Nicholson often embraced a lifestyle that kept him constantly moving, from one relationship to another, from one chapter of life to the next. But even a man like Jack Nicholson, someone who seemed impossible to tie down, had women he never truly forgot. Over the years, through interviews, stories, and the people closest to him, it became clear that certain women left a deeper mark on him than others. These weren't just fleeting Hollywood romances. These were connections that stayed with him long after the cameras stopped rolling. One of the most significant women in Nicholson's life was Angelica Hust. Their relationship lasted for nearly 2 decades, something almost unheard of for Nicholson. Huston was not just another partner. She was a constant presence during some of the most important years of his career. What made their relationship unique was the balance between passion and conflict. Huston was strong, independent, and unafraid to challenge Nicholson, something he both admired and struggled with. Their bond was intense, filled with moments of closeness as well as distance. Even after their relationship ended, Nicholson spoke of her with a level of respect that suggested she was never truly out of his life. She wasn't someone he simply moved on from. She was someone who remained a part of him. Their relationship also represented a period when Nicholson was evolving both personally and professionally, and Huston was deeply intertwined with that transformation. She saw him at his most ambitious and his most vulnerable, understanding sides of him that few others ever witnessed. That depth of shared experience created a bond that couldn't easily be replaced, making her presence in his memory far more permanent than a typical Hollywood romance. There was also an emotional complexity between them that never fully resolved, which in many ways made the connection even harder to forget. It wasn't a clean ending, and for someone like Nicholson, unfinished emotions often linger far longer than simple ones. Another woman who left a lasting impression was Phillips. Their relationship came during a time when Nicholson was still finding his place in Hollywood. Phillips brought a different energy into his life, free-spirited, creative, and deeply connected to the cultural shifts of the era. Their connection wasn't about stability, it was about experience. She represented a period of transformation, both for Nicholson and for Hollywood itself. Even years later, her presence in his life remained tied to that sense of freedom and change that defined an entire generation. She was part of a world that blurred the lines between music, film, and culture, and Nicholson found himself drawn to that fluidity. With her, life felt less structured and more instinctive, something that aligned perfectly with his personality at the time. That connection to a defining era made her unforgettable, not just as a person, but as a symbol of a moment in his life that could never be recreated. She wasn't just someone he remembered. She was part of a feeling, a time, and an identity that shaped who he was becoming. Then there was Flynn Bole, a relationship that surprised many due to the age difference but captured public attention nonetheless. Bole brought a different dynamic, one that was more public, more scrutinized, and perhaps more complicated. While their time together didn't last as long as some of his earlier relationships, it was significant in its own way. It showed that Nicholson, even later in life, was still drawn to strong personalities and unique connections. There was something about Bole that stood out to him, something that made the relationship memorable even after it ended. She represented a contrast to his past, something newer, more modern, and shaped by a different Hollywood landscape. That contrast created both intrigue and tension, making the relationship feel unpredictable. And for Nicholson, unpredictability was often what made something worth remembering. It reminded him that even after decades in the industry, he was still capable of feeling something unexpected, something that broke the pattern of familiarity he had grown used to. A more grounded and deeply personal connection existed with Rebecca Brousard. Unlike some of his more high-profile relationships, this one carried a different weight. Brousard is the mother of 2 of Nicholson's children, and that alone created a bond that went beyond romance. Their relationship represented a more intimate side of Nicholson, one that wasn't always visible to the public. It was about family, responsibility, and a connection that couldn't simply be walked away from. Even after their separation, the relationship remained significant because of the life they shared together. With Brousard, Nicholson experienced something closer to stability, a glimpse into a life that wasn't defined solely by Hollywood. That grounding influence added a layer of meaning to their connection, making it impossible to categorize it as just another relationship. It was part of his legacy, not just his past. In many ways, she represented the side of his life that the public rarely saw, the quieter, more human side that existed beyond fame and reputation. Finally, there is Faye Dunaway, a woman who matched Nicholson's intensity both on and off the screen. Their collaboration in Chinatown created one of the most iconic pairings in film history. Dunaway's presence was powerful, controlled, and emotionally complex, qualities that resonated deeply with Nicholson's own style. While their relationship was more professional than personal, the connection they shared during that film left a lasting impression. Sometimes, the most memorable connections aren't defined by romance, but by the energy two people create together in a moment. Dunaway challenged Nicholson artistically, pushing him to elevate his performance and meet her intensity with his own. That kind of creative connection often leaves a deeper mark than romance, because it exists in a space where both individuals are fully exposed through their craft. For Nicholson, those moments of artistic alignment were just as powerful as any personal relationship, because they captured something rare, two people completely in sync, even if only for a brief time. When you look at the women Jack Nicholson couldn't forget, a pattern begins to form. These weren't just relationships based on attraction. They were connections built on intensity, individuality, and a certain kind of unpredictability. Nicholson was never drawn to simplicity. He was drawn to depth, to women who challenged him, who stood out, who left something behind. Each of these women represented a different chapter of his life. Angelica Hust was the long, complicated love. Michelle Phillips was the spirit of a changing era. Flynn Bole was a reminder that connection doesn't follow rules. Rebecca Brousard was family, the part of his life that grounded him. And Faye Dunaway was the artistic equal, the presence that matched his energy on screen. For a man who spent his life moving forward, these were the people who remained behind, not as memories, but as something more permanent. Because no matter how far you go, there are always a few people you never truly leave behind. And for Jack Nicholson, these were those people.